Hey guys, City Walk, City Wall here, and welcome back to Kobayashi Island. I wanted to start off this episode just by showing you what got built last episode and talking a little bit about what got built, or what's going to get built this episode. So this is the new Kobayashi crossing. As you can tell, it's a lot more pedestrian friendly and a lot flashier. And what we're going to do this episode is start on a suspended monorail network. And I think it's going to be pretty cool, a nice addition to downtown, something other than trains. So let me just show you exactly where I'm thinking that's going to go. So we're gonna do a line that we'll place down today 2 stops and kind of just detail one of them. And so I'm thinking that we're going to start here, do 1 stop here, and it's going to be kind of a junction with these other stations, these train stations. And then the monorail line is going to come up along this major road here, and then in this direction it's going to come down here. And the reason I've done that is I think that's kind of like a little bit of an alternate route to what is already built. I mean, we have one train line that kind of does a loop like this. We have a train line that starts over here at the central station, goes to Kobayashi Crossing, meets up here, and then is going to dead end over here at the tip of the peninsula. And then a third line that starts here, goes all the way around the edge, and comes to here. So having a monorail kind of in between all that, doing a route sort of like this, I think is going to be a nice little addition to downtown, and I think it'll look really cool. So let's get into the episode. So the idea behind this monorail line is that it's something that was built a lot more recently and was kind of built after a lot of the buildings were in place in downtown, and it was just kind of like added sort of a little bit as show because, you know, monorails are very flashy ways to get around, and also just to kind of be a little bit of supplemental transportation. And because it's not like original, sort of like the train lines are, I want it to feel like its route is sort of accommodating the buildings that were already there and the roads that were already there, and it's very, you know, much taking into account, you know, what was in downtown before it got built. So it's not going to be cutting through blocks that are already, you know, filled with buildings, or that will be filled with buildings in a way that the train does. It's going to be going over the center of streets and making very sharp turns to follow the grid, and it's going to be just generally like very sort of passive in the way that it moves through the city. It's not going to be sort of chopping things in half and doing stuff like completely changing how the infrastructure is, you know, in a way that these train lines are. Like the train lines, you know, there's streets that are affected by the way that the train cuts through the city, and the monorail would never do that because it's too recent. It's just kind of like going through areas that are available for it to go through, pretty much. So this first thing that I'm doing is building this kind of station area where these 2 train lines and this monorail meet up. This is similar to the station that's kind of behind Old Town, where it is sort of like a hub of a station. It's got multiple places, multiple lines that meet here, but it's not obviously the central station. And this is something that, in order to have like a very functioning public transit system, you gotta have places like this that aren't the central station but have multiple lines that meet up there. It really helps get things sort of moving and get people from one line to another. It makes the city way more connected than it would be if it was just sort of like one central hub. So I've been trying to place, you know, areas and train stops around the city where multiple things meet up, and you can really, you know, transfer from one line to another very easily, you know, depending on, you know, no matter where you are in the city. What you're seeing me do right now, which is really awesome, I'm using the procedural objects mod and a bunch of these expressway pillars to create sort of like a custom entrance to this train station area. It's like sort of like a train station / mall a little bit. And this is really cool. I think there's like a tunnel where the cars can drive under, and that's sort of like I built it to look like it was underground parking, but in reality what it is it's a series of streets that go around underneath this area and provide road access to all the buildings here, so they can obviously, get goods and ambulances and hearses and things like that. So the way I did that, in order to stop people from walking that way and force them onto these pedestrian paths, which is obviously going to look cooler because the pedestrian paths are up above on the kind of upper level, what you're seeing me do now, is that road underneath. It has like one segment's worth of tunnel, and the tunnel doesn't have a sidewalk part attached to it, so at least for those regular little roads, so people can't walk that way. It's literally only able to have cars access it driving through, and anyone who wants to access these buildings is going to have to go on the pedestrian paths. So you can see there's just a lot of people using this, and that's mainly because I have these kind of this temporary skyscraper here on the right. You can kind of see it off to the side of the frame every once in a while, and that was just sort of there because I needed a little bit of a boost in population when I was doing all of these industrial things the last however many episodes. That's been like 7-8 episodes or whatever. So I just placed down like a bunch of these skyscrapers in the same place and have like a couple thousand people living there. You see there's the population's like 64,000, but if I take those away, which I will at some point this episode, the population goes way down to like 50,000 or something like that, and a lot of the people that are walking around this area end up leaving, but they'll be back eventually when this whole area kind of gets built out with real buildings and there's an actual population of permanent residents here, not just sort of filler for industrial areas. So this whole shopping area I think is pretty cool, what I'm doing here. You're seeing me right now place down these, what are they? They're like prop commercial buildings. They're not actual buildings, they're just props that look like they're buildings, and you can place them kind of at ground level and make it look like there is a building there. So what I did just a second ago is you saw me place down just a couple of these like little square buildings and put those commercial fake facade fronts around it, and I kind of have this as like the entrance to the station. That's sort of what I was thinking with this area that I'm now putting billboards on top of. And I really like the way that whole station looks, especially that little tiny walkway with all those signs in between. I think it's a very unique looking place. The next thing I'm working on here is this just sort of area that's next to the train station. I wanted to get some higher buildings around there, and I do apologize. Obviously, you just saw me like completely bounce around this episode. I do a good amount of bouncing around, so just try and bear with me and don't get so mad if things are a little bit out of order. But that's kind of how I like to build sometimes, is just kind of like bopping around back and forth. If I notice something that needs to be done, I'll go over and deal with it, and if not, I'll just continue building where I'm at. So I'm just kind of like trying to get everything going leading away from this area now. I'm trying to get this little strip of land filled with plants and things. I'm trying to get the roads looking a little bit better along this avenue here. And this area, you can obviously tell there's like a freeway above, 4-lane in each direction streets, and this is going to be probably the main way that cars are able to get in and out of downtown along this little road here, because a lot of people coming from the harbor or the airport would take the freeway here and go up and over, and then the freeway obviously connects to the lower road as well as another road over there a little bit further down. So this is going to be a pretty busy area. I think by the end it's going to be like a big, hopefully there's some traffic. We'll see. I mean, traffic is tough to come by in Kobayashi Island, but I think it's going to be cool. Right now I'm working on covering up this black, whatever this is, this texture that appears when you put something underneath the road. And what's underneath it is the train line. It's not actually a tunnel that goes under there. I don't have it going to an actual tunnel segment. It's more of it's an above ground segment. It just clips underneath the road. And I did that because the station is right there on the other side of that road. That's like where the station, I think even the station is a little bit under the road, the one that's part of the Kobayashi crossing area. So that's just all above ground stuff that's clipping through, and I was covering it up with ploppable surfaces to kind of give it like the correct texture and get rid of that black stuff. So man, so you guys have no idea how happy I am to be working back in downtown. It's really just like the thing that I like to do the most in City Skylines is make really high density stuff. I think it's the most interesting, and it's the most fun watching your population go up and tons of people starting to walk around and dealing with really dense public transportation, stations very close to each other and lots of different lines going all over the place. It's so much more fun than what I've been working on the last however long. So very exciting to come back. A while ago, I posted. I obviously have an Instagram, and I post things to Reddit as well. Screenshots from Kobayashi Island, and I'm very proud to say that the City Skylines official Instagram account follows me on Instagram, which is very awesome, and they repost my things every once in a while. And a while ago they posted a screenshot from the episode where I built the school with the view, and they hit me up after they posted it and were asking some questions about where I'm from and what kind of style of city I like, or why I chose a Japanese city. And to be honest, this is why, is because of areas like this. I really like dense areas. I think that Japanese cities have some of the coolest dense areas with just like signs and how dense they are, and trains going all over the place. I find it really interesting how Japan is such a high percentage of the land in Japan is mountains, and cities and countrysides are confined to very small portions of the country. I think Japan, if I remember right, is like 70 or 80% mountains. So there's not a lot of room for things in Japan, like in flat spaces. So everything is very dense, and that's kind of like why I find it so interesting, is because not only are downtowns dense, but farmland is dense, and low residential areas are dense. It's not like the US where I'm from, where low density areas are really low density. So it's just a very interesting style to follow, and that's kind of what I enjoy most about City Skylines, is just making really dense areas. So I'm excited to obviously finish out this series, but I think my next series is gonna somehow have even more opportunity for high density than this, which is going to be pretty awesome. We'll see how well it works making it as dense as I plan to, but I think it'll be cool. So this is a cool little technique that you're about to see me do, where I use retaining walls. You just saw me place it down and raise it up to cover up a big portion of the side of this building. I wanted there to be these signs that say whatever these say, Odaku or something. And there was like a bunch of windows in the way on the side of the building, so I covered up the entire side of the building with retaining walls, and I think that actually looked pretty cool and relatively natural, considering what I was doing was a little bit weird. The last thing that I do this episode is work on this little area kind of behind this skyscraper that's been here forever. And it's not the most interesting area, but I did do something really awesome that I want to continue doing things like this, where I made some low kind of rise buildings here. All the buildings are very low because there's a very good view that I wanted to preserve, going in the direction of Kobayashi Crossing from here. Kind of looking down the street from here towards Kobayashi Crossing is really cool, and I wanted to preserve that view and not build skyscrapers on this block. And so what I did to kind of make this somewhat of an interesting area is I made an alleyway between all these buildings and filled the alleyway with a ton of neon signs and kind of made it into like a sort of like back alley with some shops and things. So you're seeing me place down a bunch of little tiny, some of them are residential buildings, but most of them are commercial buildings. They all look like commercial buildings at least. And so these are all going in here, and soon I'll be placing down a ton of neon signs. So here we go, we're starting to do that. And these neon signs are awesome. I'm going to continue using these all over. These are some of the stuff that I downloaded before last episode in order to just have a lot more signs to be able to place down in Kobayashi Island and downtown. I think it's, you know, one of the things that adds like just so much to a Japanese downtown and to an Asian city downtown, and is just all these different types of signs all over the place. So I'm going to continue doing things like this, definitely. Little alleyways, very narrow streets, lots of signs, and lots of things on the walls. But that's almost it for this episode. Like I said, I'm just so happy to be in downtown and continue working here. I'm not gonna work here forever. I think I'm gonna try and go back and do some other things before I finish out everything in Kobayashi Island. But for the time being, this just feels great. It's a really nice change of pace. It's not the airport anymore, thank God. So that's it for me. City Walk, City Wall here. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time.